and kick us off here for our last hearing of the day. Well, welcome to Irvington High School, our California champs, and congratulations on making the top 12 in this year's competition. We're really happy to see you and looking forward to your presentation today. My name's Emily Voss. I am the Virginia We the People State Coordinator. And in just a moment, I'll have your Unit 1 judges introduce themselves. They'll ask you to do the same. And then, of course, we'll get into our question of the day, your prepared statement, and the follow-ups with a couple extra bonus minutes today. All right, so for the very last time, let me hand things over to the judges.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Emily. Hello, California. We are so glad to get to be with you today and appreciate the fact that we will get to end our day on the high note of spending the time with you. My name is Sue Leeson. I'm a senior justice of the Oregon Supreme Court.
I'm Tim Moore from the Center for the Study of the American Constitution at the University of Wisconsin.
Hi, California. I'm Miriam Memar-Sadeghi, board member for the Center for Civic Education, and I was a student in this program. The very first year it was offered on the bicentennial of the Constitution, and I have spent a large part of my career providing opportunities for civic education to people living in not free countries like Iran, where I'm originally from.
Terrific. We would like to meet you before we get started.
Of course. Good afternoon. We're Unit 1 from Irvington High School. My name is Samuk Suresh.
My name is Natraj Vairavan.
And my name is Harsha Gandala. Thank you, judges and timekeeper, for facilitating this testimony. And thank you to our coach, Mr. Martinez, for preparing us.
Well, nice work. Congratulations on being here. We're doing question 1 today, starting with a quotation from Benjamin Rush. The American War is over, but this is far from being the case with the American Revolution. To what extent, if any, did revolutionary principles influence constitution making during the founding period? What problems, if any, does the principle of consent present when creating or amending constitutions? And to what extent, if any, are revolutionary principles evident in modern times? We look forward to your presentation.
In a letter written to Thomas Jefferson in 1815, John Adams expounded on the nature of the American Revolution when he wrote, "What do we mean by the revolution? The war? That was no part of the revolution. It was only an effect and consequence of it. The revolution was in the minds of the people." The revolutionary principles of political equality and liberty were self-evident truths that served as the foundation for radical governmental change in colonial America and significantly impacted the framing of early state constitutions in the founding period.
First principle of political equality directly led to the establishment of democratized Republican forms of government with increased voting privileges in the 13 respective states. Article 4 of the 1776 New Jersey Constitution removed property restrictions on those who could vote or hold office, while also extending suffrage to women, free African Americans, and Native Americans. Along with New Jersey, 6 other states also increased voting accessibility. Additionally, all 13 states created Republican forms of government, which allocated power to the people rather than the government itself.
The second principle of liberty led to the creation of state bills of rights, which protected the individual privileges of citizenship, including that of due process. Section 1 of the Virginia Declaration of Rights enumerates that all men have certain inherent rights, such as the enjoyment of life and liberty and the means of acquiring and possessing property. Additionally, Article 12 of the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights erects due process protections, safeguarding against self-incrimination and guaranteeing a fair trial by one's peers.
When creating and amending constitutions, the principle of consent leads to the tyranny of the minority. This was the case in the Articles of Confederation, since a unanimous vote was required to make any changes. Since Rhode Island would always oppose the ratification of amendments, changing the articles to meet the needs of the majority was impossible. The framers attempted to fix the tyranny of the minority and called for extraordinary but not unanimous support when advancing amendments to the U.S. Constitution.
Article 5 outlines these majority requirements with 2/3 of both houses' approval in Congress and 3/4 of the state's approval. This high bar, in theory, should make it possible for a supermajority to call for governmental change, even if the minority opposes it. However, in America's hyper-polarized political atmosphere today, the framers' principle of consent has made it difficult for any amendments to get ratified at all, with no new amendments being approved within the last 3 decades.
The revolutionary principles of political equality and liberty are still widely seen today. Stacey Abrams' organization Fair Fight and the bill H.R. 1, more commonly known as the For the People Act, work to increase political equality. Fair Fight has made massive strides over the past 3 years to address policies that inhibit minorities from voting. The For the People Act was created in retaliation to the numerous regressive voting policies being passed in Georgia, Iowa, and other states. It attempts to expand voting rights, limit partisan gerrymandering, and reduce the influence of money in politics. Both of these efforts will tremendously increase the number of minority citizens who have access to voting.
Moreover, mass protests exemplify how our country still struggles to provide liberty to minority communities. With no substantial check on day-to-day law enforcement, due process violations that lead to over-policing and mass incarceration remains one of the biggest causes of racial discrimination. Campaign Zero of 2020 rallies for new policies like defunding the police and increasing police training to reduce police brutality. Thank you for your time, and we're eager to answer any questions.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Tim, would you like to start?
Sure. Let's start with one of the first fights about what the revolution was. The Anti-Federalists accused the Federalists of not being true to the American Revolution. What was their critique of the Federalists in this regard?
So the Anti-Federalists considered America, or the Constitution that we created, the Articles of Confederation, to not uphold the values that we had in the Revolution itself. And Benjamin Rush talks about this in his article, The Address to the People of the United States, when he argues that the main revolutionary principles that we fought for through the Revolutionary War were not being upheld by the Articles of Confederation and was lacking in protecting the liberties of the people. Therefore, we needed a stronger government that enumerated the rights of the public, so therefore it wouldn't be violated if the government became oppressive.
My question, though, was about Anti-Federalists accusing the Federalists of not being true.
Right.
Well, one criticism that the Anti-Federalists did have of the Federalists was that the Federalists did not include a Bill of Rights originally in the Constitution. Essentially, what was important for the Anti-Federalists is that we had a written set of rights that were granted to all people. However, the Federalists argued that essentially enumeration is elimination, and so therefore the Federalists argued against having a Bill of Rights. But in the end, we did include the Bill of Rights.
So I want to go back to your opening statement in the Adams letter to Jefferson, that the revolution was in the minds of the people. Political equality and liberty. Overwhelming number of people could not participate in state governments or under the national constitution. I don't get it. Help me understand what feels like a disconnect between a commitment to popular sovereignty or political equality and political liberty and the reality.
Right. In the beginning, only white property holding men could vote. However, because property was much easier to acquire in America, this was a much larger proportion of America's population in general when compared to Britain. And because women and other non-property holders did not have access to vote, this took many, many centuries for these revolutionary principles to stick around, and this influenced suffrage movements and eventually led to the 19th Amendment and more widespread suffrage for all people.
So are you arguing kind of a trickle-down theory of revolutionary principles?
Absolutely not. We believe that even though, like, at that time, we agree that the founders and framers did not do a proper job in providing liberties to all people. However, they did make massive strides in state constitutions. For example, in the New Jersey Constitution of 1776, Article 4 extended voting privileges to people of color as well as women. Additionally, they also removed the property restrictions that prevented people from holding office. Now, moreover, 6 other states, including Pennsylvania and Massachusetts, also erected similar statutes that allowed people to have more direct voting access. But we see this problem being more exponential when we come to the Articles of Confederation, where they never talked or where they never specifically addressed the idea of voting or expanding the privileges of voting to the people, and they left that up to the states.
I would like to be in strong support of my colleagues Harsh and Samuk here. I strongly believe that in early America, economic opportunity was tied to political equality, as Harsha previously mentioned. Essentially, when you came to America as, for example, an indentured servant, it was very reasonable that the indentured servant could finish their servitude and then buy land afterwards. Moreover, it was also reasonable for non-indentured workers and free laborers to come to America and expect cheap land and high wages. And so there was lots of economic opportunity combined with the lack of a rigid social structure like there was in England that allowed for more people to buy land and be able to vote.
Okay, coming to the present in your world and your role as citizens of the United States, where do you see the biggest threats to consent today?
I personally believe the biggest threat to consent comes with partisan gerrymandering. Now, partisan gerrymandering over the past couple of years, partisan gerrymandering over the past couple of years has been deemed as non-justiciable by the courts in Beale v. Whitford of 2016, as well as Rucho v. Common Cause. Now, what does this mean? This means that many people are unable to be adequately represented in Congress because their votes are like hidden and their voices are stifled. Now, why is this a huge threat to our a huge threat to government by consent? If people are unable to voice their opinions and have a say in government, they're unable to consent when the Congress or when the House of Representatives makes changes that directly relate to them. So we must create an amendment to ban partisan gerrymandering in order to fix this moving forward.
To add on to my partner, the reason why partisan gerrymandering is so bad is because America was built on this representative democracy, built around the trustee theory of representation, where people elect their representatives and trust them to represent their views, using their opinions and using their best judgments when they do so. However, because of partisan gerrymandering, we have people in government officials redrawing district lines to make sure that these opinions aren't well represented and their delegates and the people that they're supposed to trust aren't truly people that are right for them, which really destroys our whole idea of our trustee theory in general.
Well, so tell me what this amendment would look like, because district lines are drawn in the states. They're not drawn at the national level. States have various processes for doing that work. What would your amendment look like to apply? And I assume it would apply to all the states.
Absolutely. So one thing that we can use is we can use Professor Wendy Cho's new AI algorithm to detect whether or not partisan influence is present when district lines are being drawn. Professor Wendy Cho of the University of Illinois created this in order to make it easier for us to detect whether or not partisan gerrymandering can be used. Is present. And if it is present, the Supreme Court will then rule that these lines should be redrawn to better reflect the population.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. Moreover, we need to create an amendment that bans partisan gerrymandering altogether. With Rucho v. Common Cause, it was very clear that the Supreme Court could not step into cases of partisan gerrymandering, and they stated that they would leave this issue to the states. And so, if we enabled states to be able to step into issues regarding partisan gerrymandering and even the federal government, this could reduce partisan gerrymandering cases.
Well, the states already are drawing the lines. They are doing the district drawing. Do you agree with the principle of one person, one vote as the basis for drawing districts?
Absolutely, yes. We believe that it should be one person, one vote, because our government is created on the idea of consent. In order for us to be able to have an adequate voice in Congress, we must make sure that every single person is equally represented in the House of Representatives. Now, this is a huge problem in the founding period too. In Federalist 52, they argued that a representative must be a substitute for the citizens. So therefore, using this one person, one vote theory, we're able to make sure that each person's votes are adequately represented and no single person has a weaker voice than any other person.
Thank you.
Do you think subsequent social revolutions would be to Benjamin Rush's liking?
So social revolutions as in like increasing liberties?
Oh, I'm talking about social revolutions. Has nothing to do with politics per se.
Absolutely. So Benjamin Rush argues that in order for us, or like society, the revolutionary principles that were evident during the founding period will carry on throughout our history and will will be present all throughout America's history and even in the future itself. Now, even in the form of social revolutions, we can see that these revolutionary principles will be upheld because in many cases, revolutionary principles are meant to protect the liberties of the people. Recently, we've seen many examples of these social protests through the Black Lives Matter movement and the Protect.
Now you got right to politics again. I want to plop Rush right down in the middle of the 1960s. Is he going to say, wow, there's the American Revolution?
Sexual revolution, the feminist revolution.
Hippies, come on.
Yeah, even in their cases, absolutely, because we are extending the right of liberties to people or like marginalized people. For example, in the 1960s, and we've had numerous strides through the civil rights movement to provide liberties to marginalized communities like the African American community, people of color, as well as females. Additionally, we had the Equal Rights Amendment of the 1970s, which unfortunately did not pass because of the problems with the tyranny of the minority that we see in the amendment system today. And if we need to, we believe that these revolutionary principles are still upheld, and Benjamin Rush would absolutely agree with them.
Rush also argued that elected representatives, are we done?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we could stay the rest of the day. I trust y'all could too.
No doubt.
Thank you so much. All right, time for feedback. Marian, would you like to start?
Sure. I really, I enjoyed how much you brought in, and you guys had, you were relaxed. You had a finesse. You seem to have an appreciation for this material, like a genuine interest. And yeah, really enjoyed it. I think that you did a lot of hard work to get here. So congrats to you, congrats to your teacher, and well done.
Tim.
Yeah, I really appreciated the strength of your argumentation based on state constitutions. I think as I look at my my notes here, that stands out clearly, that your use of that evidence was very effective. I mean, I couldn't resist asking. I mean, I'd love to see Benjamin Rush at Woodstock to see if he recognizes that as the legacy of the American Revolution, the war. So that's why I wanted to push you on that in a non-political way. Are these social movements consistent with that time period? I would have liked to heard a little bit more on the anti-federalist critique of those snarky federalists seeking to subvert the American Revolution. They used rhetoric that's quite remarkable, hyperbole, in fact. So I would have liked to heard a little bit more about that, but I think overall you've marshaled evidence quite well and quite effectively. So I commend you for that, and I've enjoyed the last 15, 20 minutes that we've been together. Good luck in the future.
I couldn't agree more. That was a very strong presentation. A couple places where I'd push you a little bit. You read right over the Virginia Bill of Rights that talks about not only enjoying, but the means of acquiring property. Wow. Now that is a revolutionary principle. It's right in the Virginia Constitution Bill of Rights. I don't know what Virginia's done with it, but man, if they're going to create for me the means of acquiring property, I'm packing. I'm out of here and I'm going to Virginia. That you read it to us and then jumped right over it in terms of their view of a revolutionary principle. I think really surprised me a little bit. The other thing is you really have to know your anti-federalists. Their Bill of Rights argument was a throwaway. That was just a political throwaway. Their substantive critique of what happened at the Constitutional Convention is really important for you to grasp in order to make stronger some of the other arguments that you made. Let me leave you with a challenge. I read recently that Kurt Gergel, when he went in for his naturalization exam, told the examiner that there is a fatal flaw in the American Constitution. And the examiner was so upset that he got up and walked out, didn't ask him where it was. The current theory is that it's lost somewhere, embedded somewhere in Article 5. And since you mentioned Article 5, I want you to go find the fatal flaw. Nice presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for all your feedback.
Good job,
Great to
guys.
be with
Wish
you.
you the
Great to
best
be
in the
with you.
future.